Lately, I've been going backwards with the games I've been playing. I started playing the Assassin's Creed series again, starting with 2 since, well, the first one is a bit of a slogfest if I'm at all honest. I finished up Revelations though, and I haven't really gone back to it. I've been messing around with Titanfall 2, finally. I've played Raft with a buddy. I've messed around with Deep Rock Galactic, which is for all the rocks and stones. I'm still plugging away at improving in Doom a bit. The older ones, funny enough. Though I did pick up Doom Eternal a little bit more again here after upgrading my PC, so what can I say on that end? Dabbled with the Master Chief Collection, started up Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I started it. And yes, even messed with Destiny 2 again, taking my Titan to a whole 970 power level. Real far, I know. But through all of this weird game that I kept being told to play kept popping up. A game that I think the vast majority of you would enjoy as well. A game with no light or dark, no good or evil, no clear victor. There is only a fight to survive. In some ways, it might sound familiar to you. In others, I don't think you have the first clue. Neither did I. I pushed off playing Remnant due to my time invested into Destiny. After pulling away from it and finding the games I've missed over the years and finding one still supported today, I realize my own personal mistake. Due to life, due to work, friends, a feeling of I have to stay in this lane, due to all of that and more, my time was split between creation for one game and playing that one game. How stale that was for me. That's not how my mind generally works, and I think my theories on Destiny over the last couple of years should express that. If you've listened to any of them, I think you know what I'm going along with on that one. I'm all over the place, and putting myself in that one position may have been great for YouTube and the algorithm, but not for me and my mind. So, what is this long-winded introduction here for? Well, it's to simply say, after putting down Destiny nearly for good, and seeing the other possibilities out there, I felt a bit lost. I wasn't sure what to do, where to go, what game to think about covering or looking into next. I had my bit with Doom, and I will go back to that since it's a great story and a setup that is offered by id. But for a time, that was even difficult for me to play and look at. It's just my mind. And I know I have to get over myself and the hurdles I put in front of myself. And I'm sure that some of you can understand that. Perhaps that's what's so poetic about Remnant's tagline for me, even though I know that's in no way its intent, because it literally brought me from the ashes. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. Before I start today, I want to say I hope you're all healthy, safe, and okay. I'm still here because of you guys, and it would suck to find out any of you weren't well. With that, stay safe, stay healthy, and be respectful to those around you. My point of today's video is to outline the kind of game that Remnant is. Gunfire games are, quite bluntly, in need of some better marketing for this title, as I'm sure the vast majority of you haven't even heard of this game. That's a true and absolute shame. First up, the game is available on PS4 and Xbox One, as well as PC on both the Epic Game Store and Steam. Gunfire games may also sound familiar to at least a few of you for another series that they, created, called Darksiders. Being more of a free agent at this point, the company is making titles that they want to make, and it's obvious, even with their stint into VR titles, that they have an affinity for post-apocalyptic and rather challenging games. Difficulty settings included, at least. Remnant's universe is fairly young, as the company started it back in 2016. I'll never be able to play this title thanks to my constant migraines from VR, but Kronos began this journey into an alternate world Earth, one that has seen much better days. In both titles, you play as a member of the human race, from a tribe that seems terribly in the know of what's going on. Splintered and broken, humanity is fighting against a monstrous species called the Root. These bark-skinned invaders showed up one day out of nowhere. It's unknown why, at the onset of Remnant, this is the case. But you see, That's the element that starts to grow on me about the game. No tree pun intended. In my next look into the game, I want to give a basic synopsis of the story. I want to give plenty of layers here for those that may want to look into the game for themselves, to have a somewhat spoiler-free experience for the next week or so. I'm also going to be going through these things a bit more willy-nilly. Gone are the days where I'm scripting everything. Certain pieces, like I have been here, yes, but not everything. It just saves me time and it's better for my mental state at this point, you know? So, what's the point of the rest of this video? Well, I'm gonna shill the crap out of this game and talk to you about what it's like playing it. Consider this as close to a review as I might get, though perhaps expect this for whenever we shift gears to another major title once in a while. I'm looking at you, Outriders. That might get my interest a bit more, depending how it goes. So from here, if you were only really interested in saying hi or seeing if there was another story-based system I was going to talk about, you can stop the video here and move on with your life. It was great to see you guys, and hopefully I'll see you again for the next video, and we can have more of a story-based discussion about the game instead of this one, which is, again, more of just a review and general platitudes of what the game is like. So, Remnant from the Ashes. What does it play like? Well, it's a third-person, Gears of War kind of style meets Dark Souls combat. You have to really pay attention, and I know a lot of people that have said and kind of allocated it this way, it's Dark Souls with guns. There's very similar features and functions, and there's bonfires in the game, for God's sake. Like, it basically does play very similar to what you'd expect Dark Souls to kind of play as. There's also this item that you have called the Dragon Heart, which basically is your Estus flasks. It works so similar in that respect. But they embrace that idea. They embrace that they are very similar to what other titles are that are out there. And actually, in reality, which I kind of find pretty cool, in 2016, the Dragon Heart was also a thing with Chronos. So it's not like it was just added into this game. It's been something they've had for a little while now. There's a couple of differences that really separate it, however, from Dark Souls. There's no penalty on death. You don't lose anything except for progress of where you are, but it does give you the ability to really learn the fights and scenarios that you're in. So even in open world, if you happen to die, okay, you just know to be more mindful to maybe take your time a little bit more in certain areas, or maybe not fall down that pit that you ended up crossing and the metal beams gave way or anything like that. Actually, nothing like that happens, thankfully, because that would be super cheap. But you got to be mindful of where your feet land in some cases. That always is something to be mindful of. There's also something that is very, very different, and that is multiplayer. Multiplayer is available for everything. You don't have to summon people, you don't have to use any specific items. On any difficulty, in any game mode, on anything that you're doing, multiplayer is allowed. It's up to 3 players overall, so it's you and 2 buddies basically, and there is crossplay available between Steam and the Epic Games Store. I don't believe there is anything between the consoles, however, so if you and your buddies want to play, it's pretty well all together. I think they're working on something for full crossplay, however, but that hasn't been talked about. That's me kind of just thinking on what they might have brought up at one point or another. I know that was at least an aspiration. This is also something else, though, that I think is really worth talking about, and that's how the game is patched and kind of managed by Gunfire over time. Because in reality, there are moments where the game feels like a live service. The balancing that's done, the fun elements that are added in, the way that they kind of handle difficulty, and the powers that you gain, as well as some other usages and areas that you traverse to, along with optimization and additional stuff that they add in, just everything feels great. Did I also mention the starting price for the game is only $40? Because that's actually, I think, kind of important and key to it overall. They weren't expecting to sell near as much or get as much support as they did, but I think that that's a key factor in looking at how this game overall has been handled by Gunfire. They weren't expecting much. They got a lot back. And I think that's going to help them to keep this series going into the future, which is another reason I really do want to start talking about it kind of as soon as I can, even if it's another 3 or 4 years down the line before we see another Remnant game. Granted, I don't think that'll be the case, but anyway. They just got done putting out a major 2 gig patch, which only took them a few days to really get together to cement out some stuff between crossplay between the two PC stores, as well as add in some additional functionality and fix some crashes and other bugs and optimization, all getting prepped for the new DLC that comes out here actually today. Or at least I'm going to try to get this out for the 20th, but August 20th is when the new DLC does release. And that being said, you'll overall have 2 extra pieces of content that you can buy on top of the base game, or just get the complete edition and kind of be done with it, because I think that saves you a few bucks. But From the Ashes is the first main campaign. Then there is also the now new Subject 2923 DLC that's out there. And then also the survival mode, which is also coupled with the Swamps of Corsus DLC. All of these modes together are kind of their own thing, but everything relies on a single character. You can also reroll characters, you can make new ones, you can make builds that feel different if you want to, though after you start doing New Game Plus and re-rolling campaigns and stuff like that, you'll find that a lot of characters start to be very similar. If I have any complaint with the game, though, something that's very important for later and higher difficulties, that would be about it. There's also a hardcore mode that they added into the title that was free of charge at one point, or was added originally into the game. I'm not sure on release with hardcore, but I believe that was added after the fact. Just point in case more than anything of how many modes are actually in this title. And I hope to eventually show them all off at one point or another. As far as gear and equipment go, everything is viable, even the stuff you start out with. Though choosing a class has nothing to do with how you actually progress your character, so that's something I should point out to those that get interested in the title and feel overwhelmed by choosing a class. Don't. You can actually use whatever you want to, and it's no big deal whatsoever. Min-maxing is still very possible, especially with certain builds and upgrades. Finding certain equipment really makes certain builds work. I hope I can talk about that with like my typical summoner build that I run all the time. But I'm literally still a warlock, which is kind of funny, actually. And I do still have like a Titan build and so on that exists too, but it's just funny how I still wrap myself into the same general archetypes. Also, the way my brain works, I suppose. But customization is huge in here, and there's weapons that span from feeling more futuristic to being typical. The stuff that you gain on Earth, for instance, is very usual stuff that you would expect to see. A repeater pistol that looks very similar to a broom handle or a Mauser, just as a for instance. A lever-action hunting rifle with 10 rounds that you can load into the thing. A blunderbuss, a shotgun. Most of these things are very typical for what you would expect, but they're also kind of scrapped together. That's the whole point, though, with how Earth is. Like, it's ravaged. It's also taking place over the course of several years. Not the game itself, but the universe. So that gives you a feel for why these weapons are as broken and kind of almost derelict as they are. That I think is one of the better words I could use to describe it. It's just a matter of feeling that you're in a very bad situation, and that's one thing that I think the game grips itself on very well. And then something happens, and I don't want to talk about it much, because it changes the feel of the game entirely. There are other places that you go. Earth is a very important part of the game, yes, but there are other places that you go, and that is where I want to leave everything for the most part. Maybe I'll flash a couple things here just so you get a general idea of what I mean. And that's where I'll leave it. If you guys aren't interested in how this game looks or seems to play, I get it. But I think you'll enjoy the tales that the story has to offer. And that's the reason I'm still here, to talk about the story, the lore, the ideas behind these games that maybe you wanted to look into but never really picked up. And that's what I want to continue to do for you guys as well. Plus also highlight some other stuff with like other indie developers over time. Point is, let me know what games you want me to look at, especially with ones that might have a little bit more longevity behind them. I think again that like Doom and Remnant are cases that allow me to continue to look into them over time. So with all that said, let me go over a general schedule of what I'm thinking about here for videos coming up. As I've already said, I want to go through a general story outline for Remnant, though I'm not entirely sure if this will be done in a single part or multiple parts. Realistically, again, it comes down to some of the spoiler territory and what I don't want to talk about too quickly. I'm also hoping to get this out by next week, as I'm not sure what the DLC is going to do for me for my general time, plus I'm thinking about my work schedule, everything else. But I will do what I can in that area to keep myself moving. Plus, I don't want to burn myself out too quickly, so I just figure I'll start with a video a week, and we'll go from there, right? I think it makes sense. We'll also dip into Chronos. I want to actually go backwards and give you a general idea of where everything is now. And I think with the DLC coming up, we'll have more that we can really deep dive into and get a sense for where Chronos was. There are several things in Chronos that are extreme revelations to the general depiction of what Remnant is all about, and it tells a very different tale, so that's why I don't want to leave it in the dust. After that, we'll do deep lore dives, no matter how long the video is going to end up being, because I am done thinking about YouTube's algorithm at 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever the heck it is at this point. If it's a 2-minute video, I'm going to make it. There's also other themes that are going on besides that the game really does a great job of emphasizing and kind of putting this little bit in that you can kind of let your brain run wild with. It's the thing that I kind of think that Destiny started me off with, and Remnant is kind of doing that same thing. Doom did it too, so I gotta say, there's other games that can make me think that way. I think that says plenty about what Destiny at least did for me to start thinking the way that I probably should have been about more games. So yeah, I'm not going to argue with my time with Destiny. I don't think it was time wasted. I think it's just otherwise time for me to move on personally. Also, if there's enough comments that come up with it, yes, I will address anything else you have with Destiny and why I don't really want to continue with it. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it at, I am moving on, and I'm going to assume that everybody else is fine with that. And if you're not, you know you can unsubscribe and you don't have to watch my content, right? Right, like you know that. Okay, good. Just to reiterate, again, I know I'm saying it a couple times in this video, the new DLC called Subject 2923 is out now. You should be able to pick that up and basically start playing Remnant from start to finish if you really feel like it, which I cannot imagine how that experience would feel. I'm probably going to have to create like a whole new character just from scrap, just to experience what the game is like from a balancing standpoint and everything else, just to see how it plays even on normal difficulty. I think that would be really fun, just to kind of get a feel and a sense for how Gunfire is continuing to progress things. But again, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope all of you at least had a little bit of excitement to see something different from me, or just to see that I'm back in some way, even if you're not interested in the title. I think going forward, this is more what is like to happen, especially with me, and I'll vary things up as I please. Whatever game I kind of feel like talking about that day, maybe I'll do so. But anyway, to all of you, no matter when or where you are, I'll see you next space time. Take care.